So Aminat, Paakuma Tawinat, or Shorty. Hello, my name is Paakuma, or Shorty. My cousins call me Shorty on the reservation. It's my nickname. Been called that since birth, pretty much. So I just wanted to say hello. Thank you for having me up here. We're going to be talking a little bit about the history and culture of the Serrano people. I'm from San Manuel Reservation. Before we start, we usually start with a song. I'm going to sing a real short song, so it just goes by, but I always open it up this way. It's the way our traditions, we start with a blessing and then singing to open up. Payo que mío, welelo, welelo. 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 Payo que mi. Okupa, thank you. So if you hear me say Okupa, it means thank you or very good. So Okupa, if you hear me say A'ain, that means good. That's in our Serrano language, or our Maara'yam language. Again, the Serrano word came from the Spanish. So it's actually we're Maara'yam people. So we're talking about Mutu Chipkach, is we're still here. It's about the Serrano people. And again, I'm part of the Javiatam clan, the people of the pines. Our main area that we used to stay in was in all these mountains right here in this area. Before all these things were built, all my ancestors and people lived across these mountains, from San Gorgonio all the way up here to San Fernando. All the mountains that you see that go across pretty much all the way to LA and up in Lancaster area. California was home to 1/3 of all native people living in the United States. There were over 300,000 plus native people, 100 different languages and 30,000 Serrano people at one time. So Maara'yam, or Serrano territory, was spread out across much of Southern California. So if you can see the lines, that's pretty much the Serrano territory. You had almost pretty much all of San Bernardino County, a little bit of Riverside County, Los Angeles County, and Kern County. So the question for you, how about how big was the Serrano territory? Was it A, West Virginia, B, Maryland, or C, Hawaii? Let me see your hands if you think it was A, West Virginia. Let me see your hands if you think it's B, Maryland, or C, Hawaii. So actually, we're a little bit bigger than the state of Maryland. We're over 10,156 square miles. And on that 10,156 square miles, you had the 30,000 Serrano people. We were also surrounded by many different tribal nations as well. So out of that 10,156 square miles, you had Lancaster, Barstow, 29 Palms, Morongo, Big Bear, Rancho Cucamonga. And once over 10,000 square miles, all that remains is Tuvipiat. Tuvipiat is the traditional name of the land that we call San Manuel right now, today. So that was our traditional name for that area, was Tuvipiat. And today we live on 1.5 square miles. From 10,156 square miles, we live on 1.5 square miles today. And out of 30,000 Serrano people, there's only about 250 of us left. And if you think about how that happened, it was due to the missions coming in, being enslaved, and going through all that. And us trying to survive, running out of food. When the people came from the other place, trying to adapt to their food, to their things that they've given us, got us sick. So when you're used to eating the things that were grown here in California, in this area, in these mountains, like pinyon, you have your cactuses, you have your yucca plant, you have all these things that were nutritious to us and helped us to survive, and then they come over and bring things that we've never eaten before is going to get us sick. And eventually we start to adapt to those things. But those are a lot of the reasons why we died, from starvation, from being murdered and being enslaved and doing all these, going through all these different things throughout those years. So Chahun is our home. It's also our heart as well, our community. Yuri, it's a traditional name for these San Bernardino mountains and valleys of the San Bernardino range. So that's what we call it, Yuri. If you go down to San Jacinto Mountain, they call it Ayakaich. So all these mountains that you see that surround us, they have different names. The native people call them different names. So knowledge of our changing seasons was extremely important. I mean, today you have spring, summer, fall, winter, your 4 seasons. But long ago, when we lived at that time, we had different names. We call months Mwach. Wed Yama is renewal, Shi is blossom, Hanai is pour, Shikwa is frost, Rupkiva is descending, and Mari is heat returns. So if you can look by the pictures, you can see we went by the way the change, the colors of everything, the heat, the snow, and that's how we went through our seasons. And that was very important to us, because we knew when we can grow things, when we couldn't. We knew when we can harvest. We also knew when we had to migrate. So not only were we in these mountains, we were in the bottom, the deserts, the high deserts, low deserts, because we had to migrate because of the winter. When it got too cold up here and snowed up here, we migrated down to the valleys. Our food changed as well. So here's a question for you. True or false? The Serrano sometimes ate chili akuyam, or lizards. Let me see your hands if you think it's true. Let me see your hands if you think it's false. No hands. Couple. Let me see your hands if you think you're unsure. So it's actually true. So we had to eat lizards sometimes. Again, we had to survive, and sometimes there weren't those animals that we can use or eat, so we had to survive. Most likely we had the lizards in the deserts when we were out there. But we had the mountain food. Again, we had the pinyon, the pine, the bighorn sheep, the black oak, the white oak, the acorns. We had ducks and geese, and we had elderberries. Also in the valley foods, again, when we migrated, the food changed. So when we went down to the valleys and deserts, our foods became the cactus, apples, the prickly pears, or the cactus. We had antelope, yucca plant. We had rabbit. We had mesquite or manzanita. So we had all those things that were food. And again, it always changed every time we traveled. So nowadays we still harvest and eat many traditional foods like umuch. Umuch is a traditional name, or the Serrano name, or Maara'yam name for the yucca plant. And again, the yucca plant, we have our spring harvest where we go and we collect these things. I grew up with my grandmother that would take me out and I'd go cut them down for her. But if you can imagine how big they are when you see them and you walk up to them, how big those leaves are with those big spikes, those thorns on the bottom. My grandma has always had, when they cut her, they always left black marks on her arms. So she always had scars from her going out when she was young, going to get them with my great-grandfathers and grandmothers. And so I would go and cut them down for her, but I only imagine how hard it was for them to get it when they didn't have tools like we have tools today to help. And they did everything by hand, or by bone and stone, whatever they used to make those things, to help get that out. So true or false? Traditional Serrano homes look like teepees. Let me see your hands if you think it's true. Let me see your hands if you think it's false. I'm studying. That's actually false. We have a keech. It's called a keech. It's a brush house. Those are the houses that we made up in this area, down in the valleys and deserts as well. They were made of willow and palm leaves. Sometimes they were buried halfway in the dirt so you can cover the bottoms with mud. We couldn't make fire in them because you know they would burn down. So our kitchens or whatever we cooked were on the outside. It was all one big room, and the families would sleep together. So these are the houses that we lived in. We call them quiche. So true or false? Serrano wore leather moccasins. Let me see your hands if you think it's true. Let me see your hands if you think it's false. It's actually false. So what we call them waka. Is our shoes. They're made of yucca plant fibers, same plant fibers that you would make our baskets with, sometimes even made of agave. You know what agave makes tequila, right? But it's also food for us. So we use the same leaves as that to use to make the material to make these things. So I got some shoes here. These are our sandals we wore a long time ago. And again, before that, we were always barefooted. We traveled barefooted. We walked everywhere. But again, when you think of migrating a few hundred miles or a few miles, even traveling from the bottom, trying to walk up to the top of these hills, you're going to go through different terrains. You're going to go through springs, water, go through brush, and sometimes brush drops thorns. It's going to cut your feet up. And if there's a couple hundred of us traveling, and some of them get hurt, they got to stay behind where we travel up because we can't wait for everybody. And we have to get there at a certain time. So we had to start making things to cover our feet and to protect us. So we made our waka, our shoes. There's a few people here today, but I'm going to pass them around if you can be very careful and just feel what they feel like. Again, these are yucca and agave fiber, the plant, the material. And if you can feel them, you can feel how they kind of poke you like thorns, like a little bit. But if you can be very careful and pass them to your neighbor. But those were our shoes, and you can see how the material's braided, like some of the men's hair, the women's hair is braided. If you look at the bottom, you can see how they're braided this same and similar to our hair when we do braid our hair. So we went rather quick, but when you say Maara'yam, when our elders would speak and tell us our stories, because again, you think of our songs, our ceremonies, and our traditions, they were never written in books. They were always told orally. And when our elders, our grandmothers, great-grandmothers, and great-great-grandmothers and grandfathers would speak to us and teach us our music or tell us these old stories about our ancestors, then they would talk and they would end it with Maara'yam. They would always say Maara'yam or Ayanamvinik in Korea. So Maara'yam means it is done. So we move forward and continue. So that was part of the presentation. It's quick, a little bit simple as well. But I brought materials so you could look at as well. Our main instrument that we use here in Southern California is our gourd rattle. Sometimes they were hard for us to find up in the areas over here. And a long time ago, we were very, very, very poor when the government had us stop going out and collecting our own foods, and they stopped us from doing that, and we couldn't do it anymore. The government came in and started giving us commodity foods. And they would drop that off, big pallets of flour, big jars of like dry milk, cheese, rice, all this stuff they would give us. And sometimes we didn't have the gourds, the rattles to make these, or the gourds to make the rattles. So when we didn't have these, a lot of my family would use cans, and a lot of the cans would come from the commodities that they would use. This can was from a baking soda can that my grandma had from the late 60s and 70s, and she made a rattle out of it. So I carry this rattle around to show everybody, but this is a very old rattle that she made. And again, it was made out of a baking soda can. And we would use that, and sometimes you'd see the bird singers or singers using cans sometimes because we couldn't find the gourds. Many different gourds were made. Again, we traded with a lot of the natives. Again, we were surrounded, the 10,156 square miles, we were surrounded by many different tribal nations. We had the Paiute, we had Mojave, the Paiute, the Chemehueve. We also had the Cahuilla. And then you start to come out toward more of the west. You have the Tataviam, the Katanamuk, the Kawasu, and then you had everybody that surrounded us. So we traded a lot, especially with the coastal natives. And this was actually made by the ocean. And they would put seashells inside to give it the sound. Not all tribes. When you come inland around this area, our main instruments are gourd rattle. When you start to go out to the coast, their instruments change. And as you start to travel up north, they use clapper sticks. Down here in California, we never had drums. Drums were foreign to us, but you go into Mexico, before there were borders, you go into Mexico, they had drums, flutes, and rattles. New Mexico, Arizona, they had drums, flutes, and rattles. And as you travel up north to Oregon, and you start to get up higher into Seattle, Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, you see drums, rattles, flutes, all these things. We made flutes as well. And I wanted to say thank you very much, and if anybody has any questions, feel free to answer. Ask them. Yeah? The jars are different foods that we use and collect. We have the acorn, and when ground down, it turns to the flour that we use to make our acorn. They call it mush, or we call it weech in Serrano, or weewish in Kauai. We have the chia flowers. You have a chia beater to get all the seeds out, and then we collect that. We also have elderberry flower. Elderberry flower makes tea. It's also medicine for us as well. Sycamore is good for your hair and also is good for tea as well. So we use the bark off the sycamore. So these are all different. My grandmother and my godmother would use it like the tea and then use it to put it in your hair. Yeah, just like yucca was one of our main food sources, the yucca was used for soap as well. Yeah? The flowers, the stalk, and if it was like a baby yucca plant, the whole bottom actually can be used. It's really fibrous. It's really good actually too. I didn't know we could use the stalk until my grandmother had me cut it down one time. She had me peel the bark and chop them in halves, and she actually wrapped them in foil and put them in the oven and baked them, and it came out like a sweet potato. And not a lot of people knew that, but we always just the flowers and the bottom. But you can make the stalk too. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, sorry. We'd actually do them like we do our baskets. They're kind of wet still, but we have to soak everything because they dry. So we're constantly soaking and weaving and making those. Yeah, and just as well as we make baskets, it's not only the yucca plant or agave. Sometimes we use palm, juncus and deer grass, all those to make the baskets as well. Yeah.
Do you all have a museum or interpretive center or an outreach program where you take these kinds of messages out to the...
Yeah, we do have an education department, and it's part of our outreach. We do go to like preschools all the way up to universities, and I bring more stuff. I bring out grinding stones. I bring a lot more stuff that you could see, but it was so short today I couldn't put everything up.
Like cards or something, or a handout?
Yeah, we have cards back there. So if you want to see Liz back there, waving back there, she can give you cards. And again, we do go to schools. We actually go to historical societies, and we've been doing that a lot for the past, probably got a good 4 years now. My grandmother and godmother used to do this, and I kind of kept it going once they passed on.
And has your language been continually passed down, or is that something you had to go back and recover?
Well, our fluent speakers on our reservation was my grandmother and my godmother. They were fluent in Serrano and Kauai, and they can speak it and mix it up because it's almost similar to each other. Yeah, we did have to go back and revitalize it because after they passed, it started disappearing a little bit. Today, to be honest, there's only 2 fluent speakers of our Serrano language today. That's my elder cousin Ernest and his sister, and they're actually from Morongo Reservation. So with the help of our linguists in our education department, we started working with them, and we actually built a dictionary. We have a workbook now, and it's actually in Cal State San Bernardino. You can actually take the Serrano language course there. So we've actually built that, and with the help of the linguists and the teachers there, to put it together for us. And we do promote it with the children as well. We can't make them learn it, but we influence them by using it and putting it on shirts, on different things, posters, everything that they could see. In the washroom, when they go wash their hands, it's written, just like you go in here, it asks you to wash your hands. We have everything written in Serrano form. Yeah. Take a couple more questions.
You said years ago that the federal government started giving you commodities because they wouldn't allow you to collect. Can you go out and collect anything now?
We still got to get permission. But it's not hard to get it now. I mean, if you're affiliated with the tribe and you're a member and you show them all that, then they pretty much give it to you really fast to go out and still pick and gather. Yeah. And we stopped getting commodities between the end of 85 and 86, 1985 and 86. So,
And do you collect mostly on public land, or where do you?
we come up here. We collect the pine. I have a cousin that lives in Santa Rosa Reservation, and he goes all over his res and picks everything. But we still come up here and harvest and everything too. Yeah. We try to promote it as much as we can with the children. And it's kind of hard because technology today, everybody has a phone in their hand and they want to stay inside rather than be outside. But it's working little by little. And the younger children, when we catch them at a young age, it's more influence and they start to learn it faster. Yeah.
I thought something. Did you burn? Did you do any prescribed burning for creating habitat or promoting?
I know our ancestors used to do that a long time ago, but we don't do that today. We don't even have a lot of land to do anything like that anymore. Yeah. No, not no more. Yeah. Yeah.
So you talked about the numbers of like how big the communities are now.
Hmm.
Is the community growing right now?
Oh, the community's growing, yes. Yeah.
Does the community like stay on the res, or do they?
I would say half and half. You have a majority of my cousins and family live on the reservation, but then some of them live in different states, Texas, Oregon, Louisiana. They travel back and forth, Oklahoma. So they travel and they have different places, but pretty much we're here. Yeah.
Do you still have any weather workers in your group?
Weather workers.
That call, I've met some Serrano Indians probably 20 years ago, and they told me they had some people who could help call rain in and things.
Well, I've never seen that. I know my elders, my grandfather and my great-great-grandfathers were medicine people, could probably do that. Today we don't have that, but as I learned and grew with my aunt and my godmother/aunt and my grandmother, she always said it always sometimes would skip a generation and it would come back again. And I always believed in that. And little by little I see it starting to happen we don't have a lot of traditions and customs anymore. Traditional, customary things don't happen as much as they used to because a lot of the kids didn't grow up with that practicing it. Yeah, and I was lucky enough to grow up with my grandmother and godmother to learn that. And we were asked before they passed, they asked us to do these things or carry them on, and we're chosen in that way. But a lot of the families didn't have that through their grandparents, so they didn't have an understanding. And so it's very hard when we do try to stick to some customs and traditions, it's very hard for them to understand that not everybody can practice certain things. And it gets kind of hard. There's hurdles that you got to jump over with your families. Yeah?
I noticed when you ended your song,
Yeah.
it was just like the singers yesterday ended their song. Wasn't
Yeah.
words, more like,
If you can remember, if you could think of a quail, if you could think of the animals that did those noises at the end, owls, quails, you hear that, all birds. But it's not all about birds either. It's about the lives and trials of our ancestors traveling through the ice and the cold and through all these things to get where we're at today. But also using the animals and asking the animals to show them. That's why there's so many songs about our sacred, like the bighorn sheep, the deer, the eagle, all the songs about these animals, the quail, about helping the people and to survive. Yeah.
Will you share your favorite story that your grandma told you?
Yeah, a real fast one, yeah. I could share it real quick.
5 minutes.
Okay. Oh, I still got a little bit of fun. All right. Well, it's pretty crazy. It's kind of funny to make you laugh, but it's pretty deep too. She's given me a lot of stories or passed them down to me, but one that and a lot of Native Americans went through it at one time, was going to getting taken from their homes and going to boarding schools. My grandmother was the last one to go to the boarding school. She went to St. Boniface in Banning, and she was taken from the reservation of the parents, my great-grandmother and grandfather, and she went to St. Boniface. But as she told me, as I got older, I started to understand a little bit more, because when you're younger, you don't really listen that much, and you start to. But I always would ask her, tell me that story again. And she would always tell me, and she would say, well, they used to hit me. The nuns used to hit me when we speak our language. They would hit us. When we do something that had to do with us, they would hit us. So I'd speak my language, and I said, well, what happened when you speak your language? They'd hit me. And I said, so what did you do? Did you stop? She goes, no, I hit them back. So, and my grandma was like that. My grandma was really strong in that way, and so that's a story that always stays in my mind. But there was one like that at one time too when I was younger in the early 80s. Went to the Chino swap meet, and we'd go look around and find stuff, get some clothes there and bring it home. But we stopped at a Denny's one day. And again, they're kind of deep. We stopped at a Denny's, and I never thought I'd see it in my lifetime, but I got to see it. And we got there, and I sat there with my grandmother, my mom, and myself, and we're sitting there getting ready to eat, but we had some military people sitting to the bar, facing the cooks and the waitresses, and they started talking about us, kind of like in a bad way, like putting us down, kind of saying, what are these people doing in here? You know, they don't belong in here. They should, and yeah, like probably like I'd say about in 87, 88. So, and I was probably like, I don't know, maybe 12, 13, maybe like that. So at that time, you know, I've never seen racism like that until I sat there and I listened to these, and they look like generals or whatever. They're in suits, and they're nice suits they wear. And there was about 3 of them, and they were just kind of like talking and talking, would look back at us and just keep talking loud so you can hear them. And I got really sad because my grandma was just sitting there, and she didn't say nothing. And my mom didn't say nothing either. We just sat there, and and I was getting upset, kind of wanted to cry. I wanted to say something, right? So I was getting ready to say something. My grandma just said, don't say anything. Just sit there and listen. And I think that's what helped me through my life of going through different trials and different things that I put myself to, but just to sit there and listen to people and observe and learn from that. And I did learn, but that was the first time I've ever been a part or seen that and felt that way. I've never felt that way before in my whole life. And to feel that low that people can talk like that is sad. But that's another story that's been there. You had your hand way up the back. Hmm.
Up there, but they've been partnering with some of the land management to try and bring back some of the land management practices that they use, some of the prescribed burns and some of the, just different techniques that they utilize from their cultural traditions. Is there anything going on like that in this region?
Yeah, we do have stuff. We work with BLM a lot. They come out and they ask us questions as well. We haven't had no burns like that. No controlled burns like that, but we've gone to a lot of places that are sacred sites that people don't look at them as sacred sites and want to build. They've actually came out with us to work with us on trying to understand our way of life, to try to use a little bit of that when they go out to do things and be more, I guess, what would you say, perceptive of areas that are sacred to us, instead of just going through and having companies that want to go and dig somewhere, having more of an open mind and letting people know you can't do this here no more, or that you got to let the people know to stop, or when some things happen. We have Native American monitors as well that go out and monitor different construction sites when it happens to be by sacred areas. And so we have that now too. So we try to work as much as we can with people that want to learn and work with us as well and learn some of our ways of life and how we treat nature and in its way of life and how we grew up with it, and trying to give them some of our stories so that they may learn, so that before they go and cross the line of doing something, that they think about it first, or at least get a hold of the closest people that are of that area, you know, just like in the Bay Area as well, you know. And sometimes it's hard because some people don't think about that, and they just start going through and doing things without even thinking about that. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. It was really
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.